Hi, it's so good to meet you. My name is Rebecca Clare, and I'm really excited to be here and to have this opportunity to talk about this position and hear a little more about um, kind of what's involved and how my skills and experiences might be a good fit for you. I've been doing some research into your organization, and I just really appreciate the work that you're doing in the community and with children and families. So I'm excited to hear more. And continue this conversation. I know you started by asking about what drew me to this field of early childhood. When I think back to what first brought me to this field, I think it began simply with a love of children. I grew up as the second oldest of seven children, and I spent a lot of time caring for children when I was young. I always enjoyed nurturing children and just discovered a lot of joy in their curiosity. Um, this love of children led me to apply to my first job working at a before and after school program at an elementary school. Um, and I quickly discovered that a love of children wasn't quite enough. There were a lot of challenges in that job, and I realized that I needed to know, how to effectively manage a group, which I did not know at the time, and also just how to provide developmentally appropriate activities and materials to really foster their learning and development, which I didn't really know at the time either. Um, so while that came with a lot of challenges and a lot of discouragement, it did eventually bring me back to school so that I could learn more about child development and curriculum and kind of start to gain some of those skills that I realized I was missing. Um, so in the 15 years since I walked into that classroom, I've earned my associate's degree in child growth and development, and I'm about to graduate with my bachelor's degree in early childhood studies. Uh, and in that time, the more I learn about child development, and how crucial these early years are to a child's lifelong learning and development, the more passionate I become about creating safe and enriching learning environments and really fostering those strong social and emotional development for young children. This has led me to work in positions like being an infant and toddler teacher. I spent a lot of years in infant and toddler classrooms as well as with twos. Um, and then also in my role as uh, an assistant director at a Reggio inspired school, which was a lot of fun as well. Um, and now it's led me to pursue this role as family engagement coordinator, kind of a new challenge that takes all that learning to a new direction to serve children and families. I continue to find a lot of joy in the curiosity of children. That hasn't changed. But at the same time, I'm also committed to expanding my knowledge of child development, learning best practices for serving children and their families, and really connecting families with the resources in the community that they need to help the family and the child to really thrive. Um, so that's really important, but also brings me a lot of joy. Um, you asked what I consider to be my chief responsibilities as an early childhood professional. I think that's a big question. As you probably know, working in this field often involves a lot of multitasking, a lot of juggling multiple priorities at the same time. And so I think there's multiple answers to this question, which is true. So obviously, one of my first responsibilities is to ensure that children are safe, ensure their well-being. Obviously, their physical safety is part of that. So, following licensing guidelines and establishing clear policies and procedures help keep children physically safe. Um, but I think it also includes ensuring that children are emotionally safe. So, one of the ways that I've done that in the past is by really hiring carefully, hiring quality staff that know about developmentally appropriate practice, and then making sure that once they're hired, that they're trained in those appropriate practices, especially practices for guidance and discipline. I think there's a lot of opportunity for fostering development and safety in those ways if we have good practices, but also a lot of potential for harm to be done. Um, and so, as an early childhood professional, it's my job to keep that harm from being done to children, especially when I'm in a role of leadership. Um, I do feel strongly about creating safety and well-being, but I think that we have to go beyond that. I think sometimes there's this idea that um, childcare is just about caring for the physical needs of the child. That's definitely part of it. But I also think that we have a responsibility to foster learning and development in every domain. So fostering that physical development, the language development, the cognitive development, the social emotional development, kind of like we talked about before. Um, and we can really only do this when we have a holistic curriculum that integrates um, content, like the important content that we need, into meaningful learning experiences. Um, I think I've been lucky with my experiences in a Reggio inspired project based program because it's taught me a lot about project work, about interesting materials and creative activities, and how those can really foster that meaningful learning for children that gives them the skills that they need, but also through things that motivate them because they're joyful and fun and beautiful. So these kinds of experiences do provide children with the academic knowledge and developmental foundations that they need to thrive in school. But it also helps nurture their curiosity and creativity and their love of learning, which are priorities for me as well. I think those are also part of what they need to be prepared for school and for life, even beyond school. Um, I think part of my responsibility with curriculum is also to observe and assess children on an ongoing basis, so that I can identify their current level of development, um, and and kind of base my activities and materials and environments on what I know about where they are and where they need to go next. If we can't map that out, we can't really connect those um, content and materials in a meaningful way. Um, that observation and assessment also helps me to identify children with potential delays or disabilities, just something I'm passionate about as well. Um, and by identifying those and getting supports in place, I can help ensure that each child has the opportunity to grow into their full potential. Finally, I do believe that I have a responsibility and also privilege to partner with each child's family to support their learning and development, both at school and at home. I really am passionate about the power of quality early childhood environments. That's part of why I've been in this field for so long. Um, but these programs are just one piece of a child's context. By partnering with the family and the wider community, I can help ensure that each child continues to grow and thrive in their context outside of the classroom as well. Um, and so I think that's part of my responsibility as well to expand beyond just my program, um, and foster those wider contexts. You asked about what the role of collaboration in professional practice is. Um, I believe that collaboration is kind of twofold for this profession. I think, like I just talked about, one of the first pieces of that collaboration is collaboration with the child's family. I believe that successful collaboration begins with our perception of the role of a family. Um, I think it can be tempting for teachers and professionals to come in, kind of see themselves as the expert in the relationship, and the one that needs to teach families, maybe even set them straight in their practice. This is language that I've heard from teachers before. Um, but while I do hope that we have knowledge and resources that we can share with families, um, they have knowledge and resources for us as well. They have a unique perspective and expertise on their child, that we won't have because we don't have that history with their child like they do. And so by recognizing that, we can really establish that respectful two-way communication to start to share what we have and gain what they know, and really form those strong partnerships that can help kind of create that consistency between home and school that's really important, and really ensure that the child is thriving in both of those environments. Um, I think collaboration with families is really important, but I also believe that collaboration should extend to collaboration with other early childhood professionals as well. Um, I found that when I collaborate with other teachers and directors and educators and just other professionals in the field, it really helps expand my perspective. Um, when I think about the power of collaboration, I always think back to a story of a conversation I had with one of my directors at the Reggio Inspired School. I had not been teaching there very long, and I was trying to kind of develop my first project. And I had been observing the kids and kind of had a couple things that I'd seen, and I felt like they were connected, but I just couldn't draw those pieces together. And so I was having this conversation with her and sharing what I was seeing and kind of what I was struggling with. And she just kind of asked some questions and got to understand it a little bit. And then she said something about like, oh, it's almost like you could do a peekaboo project. And just that one phrase expanded my perspective. It pulled those pieces together for me, and I did. I went on to do a peekaboo project with my toddler class. That was a lot of fun and taught me a lot about project work at that age group. But it wouldn't have been possible if I hadn't opened up to that conversation and listened to that different perspective. Um, I do think that collaboration can go beyond just collaboration with other teachers. And should include collaboration with professionals and organizations, even outside of our own organization, to really ensure that each child and family is receiving the support that they need. I think about kids who might need maybe occupational therapy or play therapy or speech therapy. So by connecting with those professionals, we can get them the services they need, but also gain strategies that we can apply in the classroom as well, with the family's permission to really support what those professionals are doing as well. Um, for families, that might include collaborating with social services in our area, things like resources for food and for maybe rent assistance or medical assistance, things like that that will help ensure the family has the support they need and takes off some of those stressors that can impact the child as well. Um, and so by collaborating with these other professionals, we can kind of create a web of support for the children that really ensures that nobody falls through the cracks. Um, you ask what strategies I routinely use to ensure that I'm critically reflecting on my own growth as an early childhood professional. When I think about the strategies, I think there's both individual strategies, but also collaborative strategies. Individually, I regularly journal and reflect about my practice. As a teacher, this became part of my lesson planning process. Each week, as I was planning for the next week, I would think about, okay, what went well this week? What didn't go well? Because there's always something that doesn't go well. Um, and what can I learn from that? What can I add? What can I do differently? How can I grow from this experience? Similarly, as a director, we would often meet together as a team after events, and consider, what went well with the event? What was a highlight? What would we do differently? How can we take these notes and keep them for when we repeat this event? Or maybe we don't want to repeat this event. Maybe there's something else we want to do. And so, really, by making that reflection part of my practice, I'm able to think critically about my practice, and increase my effectiveness going forward. Um, I think that's important individually, but I think it's equally important to do that process collaboratively. I talked about like team meetings after events. And so that's one way that I've done that collaboratively. But I've also found it really helpful to attend trainings and conferences, um, to reach out to mentors, and to connect to online learning communities. Um, these kind of settings have helped me, expand my knowledge, learn new strategies, new ideas, best practices, new research. But they've also given me an opportunity to ask questions, to kind of pick people's brains about, like, okay, but what did you do with this? Or I'm having this challenge. Like, how can I grow in this? And that's really helped me think critically about my own practices as well and find just really practical, real life ways to apply what I'm learning to what I'm doing in my work. You've asked me to briefly describe an issue that might be a focus of current or future advocacy efforts, and also explain why advocacy is a hallmark of professionalism in the early childhood field. Um, that's hard to do briefly because there's so many issues. The more I learn about child development, the more opportunities I see to advocate for better practices and better support systems for children and their families. I do believe that advocacy is an important part of being an early childhood professional, um, because there's that saying, "It takes a village to raise a child." I think that's true. Like, like I mentioned earlier, we're just one piece of that puzzle for the child. Um, Even the highest quality early learning setting can only be one piece of that equation. And so, by advocating for best practices in early childhood education and beyond, um, and advocating for policies and practices that support all children and their families, we can really draw attention to the importance of these early childhood years and early childhood settings, and also help build up and strengthen the entire village around a child to ensure that they have the support they need to truly thrive and grow. And I think this benefits children, it benefits families, but I like to believe it benefits society as a whole. This is not just for them, but it is for all of us. Um, while I'm passionate about many issues in the early childhood field, one that comes to mind that's really dear to my heart is the importance of early identification of children with disabilities or developmental delays. And my passion for this issue comes out of my own experience. I have a son who has ADHD. Um, he really struggled a lot when he was younger, especially in those preschool years. Um, it took several years and a lot of trial and error before we were finally able to connect with the resources to get a diagnosis and kind of get some services in place to help him thrive. Thankfully, he's 10 now and he is thriving in school. Um, but I think back to those early years and kind of the heartache and confusion that came with that. And I also think to my own experiences as a teacher, where I've had those kids that, there was something that wasn't quite matching up, something that was off, something that was challenging. And um, I really feel passionate about giving teachers and parents the knowledge they need to recognize when those things are happening, and to know practically, like, what do you do next? If you think that there might be a delay or disability or something that's not quite matching up, like, where do you go next? Who do you talk to? Um, what resources are available? What kind of evaluations might you consider? And how can you move that forward? Because that's really what helps get those children the supports they need, um, to really thrive and um, reach their fullest potential. So that's something I'm really passionate about as well. I really appreciate you taking the time to meet with me. It's been so good to talk to you. I would love to hear more about kind of next steps in your process, what you guys are looking for, um, and kind of where you plan to go in this hiring process, and any other questions that you have for me. So thank you again for meeting with me, and I look forward to hearing from you soon. Thank you.